One. Jay Smith Cameron, welcome to An Actor Despairs. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm in Williamsburg, so it's still kind of a weird time in the city. It was the first 4th of July. I don't want to say I protested it, but I actively didn't see fireworks or do anything because I just don't feel proud to
Safe?
be. Yeah, we're proud to be an American right now. You know what I mean? We have this crazy man in the White House, and I'm just like, he made the holiday so political and ideological, and I was just like, I'm skipping this year.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm of the same mind.
Yeah, but we're here to talk about you. I'm such a big fan of yours. I mean,
Thank you.
honestly, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass when I say like your work on Succession is some of the finest acting I've ever seen, and you're like of a lot of great characters on that show, you're in my top 3. Especially like your relationship with Kieran Culkin's character. It's just I mean, that writer, he's incredible. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. Jesse is, but his whole team is amazing.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
quite a big group, and they're really amazing.
But let's start from your beginning. You grew up in Florida. Did I read that correctly?
No, well, I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, but then I did most of my growing up in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, nice.
And I went to, so I started acting in high school, and I went to the last year the year I was a senior, they had just opened a performing arts center in Greenville. So it was kind of modeled on the LaGuardia-ish
Oh, amazing.
school. But instead of going there all day, you went to your school for part of the day and did your academic classes, and then you were bused to the art center. And so, yeah, I had like a whole morning long of theater, and we did 3 plays.
What did your parents do? Talk to me about how the arts bug happened for you.
How the what?
How the art bug kind of happened for you, the artist bug.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so my big sister, who I'm very close to, was always sort of the performer in the family, and she was a really good actress, and she did act professionally for a little while, but she became a teacher ultimately, really wonderful teacher. But she was kind of always the more extrovert actor in my mind. She's 9.5 years older than me, so she was my role model. And when you talk about mentors, she was my most significant mentor, I'd say. And she so she kind of, I guess I was kind of a closet actress, because as a kid, because we would put on the soundtrack to Hair. And
nice. Great. Hey, I love the Hair
in Greenville, South Carolina in the 70s. I mean, that's pretty closeted activity, I think. But so I played the violin. I played the violin from 2nd grade all the way through high school.
Wow. Did your parents kind of force that on you, or did you find that yourself?
They didn't force it, but they encouraged it,
Yeah.
And they were worried for my sister Joanne to be in theater, because I was just saying to a friend of mine this morning that, when I was growing up, there wasn't even, there was a couple of community theater type things in Greenville that were decent, but there was no, I didn't even know that you could be a professional actor, really. It's like you could be a movie star or an amateur, which was nothing really wrong with it, but like I didn't really understand that you could be an actor. Like I didn't believe it.
It's funny, Kathleen Turner said the exact same thing when she was on the show. Yeah.
I had no all you read about was how hard it was to make it. And still to this day, as you know, like people who aren't in the theater or in our business think to be successful, you have to be Emma Stone or Meryl Streep or something. Whereas that's for actors, you just want to.
The coup is making a living and being able to pay your rent.
Truly. And to do a body of work that you feel is meaningful. Like that we don't really have a reference in our country the way they seem to in England and in Europe, where doing great plays is an end in its
totally.
That was the focus of what I wanted to do when I was that age, and a sort of purist, love of the theater. So I didn't really know. And then, so I went to this performing arts high school, and we had this wonderful teacher who's since passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Who had gone to Florida State. Florida State has a big school of theater.
And they have a great film department as well, don't they?
I don't know, Yeah, I
I
wanted to do
I
it.
I think so, because I remember
When I
I
was
was
there,
thinking
I
about
don't
yeah.
think they did yet, but
Yeah.
this is ancient history. But this guy, Mr. Breckenridge, had gotten his MFA there, and he said, you should go there, because in the
Yeah.
Southeast that was the theater hub at
Got
that
it.
time. So
How did
so
your
I
parents
looked up to
handle?
apply, and that's where I went.
Did your
And
parents handle you pursuing it in college well, or were they like
I think I think they just thought I would get it out of my system and then find some way to make a living.
become a nurse or a doctor or something? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they specifically might have thought, but I think
Yeah.
they had seen with Joanne that trying to talk her out of the arts what did not make her happy. So they weren't trying to quash me exactly, but they, like me, they didn't really know that there was any way to do that for a living. But they
Yeah.
felt like, well, she's let her follow it out and see what happens.
Yeah. So they were, great parents. They believed in.
They weren't
Yeah. Yeah.
supportive, but they weren't unsupportive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
good luck to you.
Yeah. Totally.
At work. So I went off to Florida State, and then I started getting little acting jobs. Nothing fancy, but like this theater professor I had started a really smart, interesting, cutting edge sort of children's theater in Louisville, Kentucky, and I sort of did a stopping out to do that for a season or two, and
Yeah.
then I kept kind of drifting back to school, and then I did a Victor Nunez film, his first full-length film in Gainesville when I was still a student. And my first summer theater job was in St. Augustine,
I love St. Augustine.
And then ultimately I auditioned there was a regional theater that's not there anymore. It was briefly lived, but it was in Coconut Grove at that beautiful old theater there. This theater where, Waiting for Godot had premiered. Like that's where all these great shows would open out of town. Beautiful old theater. And for a few years, it was a regional theater. And I got to play, and I got my equity card there. This is all when I would have been finishing my degree. So I was kind of like.
So you were really immersed before you even graduated. You had your equity card, like you were vastly ahead of.
By the time I got my equity card, I kind of realized I was not probably going to graduate from college, but it wasn't like I decided to drop out. It kind of happened gradually. And so then after that, so I did a year at this regional theater, and I got to play Ophelia and all these plays that were kind of being done at that time, Agnes of God and Getting Out. And I got to play all these great parts for someone my age, which was unusual. And then I moved to New York.
Okay. And I'm curious to ask you, what that theaters that you were doing in the summer, were those kind of like Williamstown equivalents, but of Florida?
Well, when you're that far away from New York in those days, I think it's probably very different now. But
yeah,
these were like, in South Florida, they were like entertainment for, there would be like classical plays in rep, and like plays that would appeal to an older audience who had money,
yeah.
There were like some like cultured summer entertainment offerings. They weren't new plays the way they do at Williamstown. Like Williamstown is really the proximity to New York and to the proximity to New York talent. They really do. They develop a lot of plays there, but that wasn't the case then.
Totally.
As I worked at, but they were exciting to me because it was proof that I could get a paycheck for acting.
Yeah, I mean it's the dream. And then when you made the decision, like LA versus New York, what factored into the New York winning?
I never saw myself in LA. So I had, I was a theater nerd. Like I really loved theater. And I wanted to do plays. So New York was sort of the mecca for that. And I was going to say, when I first got an invitation to come on the show, I was like, the main thing that I think people don't understand is that when you grow up like far afield of London or New York or LA, and you want to go in the arts, like just the act of moving to New York is this act of heroism. Like you are going out into the world to seek your fortune, and that is almost an end in itself. Like I moved to New York. I stayed on friends' sofas for about 6 months. I had an unemployment claim, and my brother gave me a check for $200.
Wow.
And I had whatever my summer job earnings were, and that's it. And I stayed on a couch, and I would
In what neighborhood?
my first apartment was on Grove Street. I stayed with my friend Laura from
Wow.
school, and drove her crazy because it was a tiny apartment even for her.
Yeah.
So that didn't last. And then, I stayed in a couple of other friends' apartments. And then when I got my own apartment, it was up in Washington Heights because that was
wow.
But that was after I started getting work. I just kind of mooched off people for a little while.
Yeah, as we all have to do. I lived on a couch for 5 years, Talk to me, can you expand a little bit, for the viewers listening about what New York was like then? Because now I'll say it, so it's my words, not your own. Capitalism has kind of destroyed this city and all the edge and the things that we, movies mystified about the city. What was it like then?
Well, it was early 80s when I got there. And actually, what was, Broadway had not had its big revitalization yet. So It was all these very down in the heels theaters or theaters that were empty.
Like the Public
and being torn down, like the Marriott Hotel, I remember one of the first things I got to do was be in a protest that I think the Public Theater had organized that would try to get these people to stop them from tearing down these old theaters.
Wow.
And it was very bleak. And there weren't that many plays on Broadway.
Yeah.
The ones that were musicals. There were occasionally a play or two. Like it was pretty bleak. And also that area was basically like junkies and streetwalkers, and it was trashy and
brothels, and
really had a whole renaissance since then. So it was pretty bleak. But then that gradually turned around. So
and then how did you kind of navigate your way through the business? Because I imagine in the 80s, soaps were still a really big thing. What was that what you were pursuing at first to get survival?
I auditioned for anything I would get an audition for. And I had a very so the first few jobs I got after having moved to New York, actually out of town, like I would audition for a regional production of something and then go do it and come back.
Okay.
So I did that twice. And then I auditioned for, and this is just a good lucky story, like this was my like a break I had. I auditioned for I had auditioned for a movie for a wonderful casting director who was open to tracking new people. And I had auditioned for some movie that I didn't get, but she'd remembered me. And it was the movie was a Southern movie. And so they were casting for a national tour of Crimes of the Heart, that Penley's play.
Oh, wow.
Right. So she called me in to read for the youngest sister in that, for Babe. And, I had just kind of gotten to New York, so I had really mixed feelings because I didn't really want to go on a long tour. Like I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
But obviously it would be a well-paid, high-profile job, and I would have to take it if I got it. Like, my God, and it was a play that I thought was great.
Yeah.
So I was running on Broadway, of course, because then they were preparing the national tour. So I auditioned for that, and I went back to my regional job I was doing, and I got a call from the person who had submitted me for that. And they said, well, I have bad news and good news. What do you want first? And I was literally on a payphone. This is before,
oh, wow.
On a break from rehearsal.
Wow.
And I was like, I guess the bad news. And he said, well, the bad news is they postponed the tour of Crimes of the Heart. I was like, okay, great. He said, but the good news is that Maya Dillon, who plays Babe, just gave notice on Broadway, and they're offering you the part on Broadway.
Wow, no way.
No way. I was like, I don't even remember the rest of the conversation. It was just buzzing in my ear. I was like,
I can't even imagine. I'm still waiting for that day I get that call.
What? And so I didn't even have I wasn't signed with an agent or anything. So my first job in New York was in this plum role on Broadway.
So for the actors listening, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, just so I can really help people understand. Do you feel like having your equity card before, coming to a city like New York is a great strategic move?
Well, it certainly helped me because I was eligible for these regional theater jobs that what I was going for. I mean,
Yeah.
my concept of what a great career would be before I moved to New York was to be in a resident company like the Guthrie or the Arena or ATL in Louisville, and play all these parts. Like I, now spent time in Louisville and in, uh, I've been and seen these like great. ATL had this great company when I was that age. When I was doing the children's theater in town, they did this. They had all those Beth Henley plays went through there actually first, and all these plays were being done there, and they had a great core company that lived there, and they owned homes, and they had families, and they had pets, and they drove cars, and it was like a regular job. Wow. But they got to play all these great parts, and the community knew them and loved them and cherished them. And I was like, what else could there possibly be? Like it would be heaven on earth. They would do classical plays. So somebody would start off, like Adele O'Brien might play Ophelia when she was younger, and then Cleopatra later, and then Gertrude later in her career. Wow. Like she just went right, season after season, and was like, to me, that would be, I thought if I could sort of line myself up to be eligible or thought of for that kind of career, that would be the end goal. Yeah. Because I couldn't imagine, and I still kind of can't imagine anything more fulfilling than that. Yeah. So, so yes, for that goal, that was great to have taken the pains to kind of go through the steps to get. So that first, I got my equity card by working at that theater in Coconut Grove. That was my equity card. Okay.
Transport me back to that telephone booth. So you get the call.
Yeah. So, and then I had to drop out of the play I was doing, which was slightly traumatic because the guy running the theater at the time did not want, I was supposed to give 6 weeks notice. Here was this young actress about to get her New York debut, her Broadway debut, and all I could give was 5.5 weeks notice. And he was not going to let me out. And
what?
People had, and then they
what an asshole.
I know. But people like the director of the play and the other people in the theater, everybody kind of lobbied for me. Yeah. And I was playing Hermia in Midsummer Night's Dream. And as it so happened, my friend Angela Workman, who's now a screenwriter, was dating the guy who played Lysander. And she was visiting, and she had played Hermia, and she was just right for it. So we got her an audition for it, and she was ready to replace me way before I left. So it worked out perfectly all the way around. Yeah. So it was kind of magical. So that was how that worked out. But for a minute there, I was like, oh, he's really going to keep me from taking his job? Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah, I'm so glad. So talk to me about your run. How was it, going from being in all these regional, classical type, smaller venues to, the home run?
Well, I have a cool story about it because.
What was the play?
Crimes of the Heart.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Which is a beautiful play. I don't know if you know that play, but that's an incredible play. Yeah. So at that time, there was a theater bar like Joe Allen's is, but it's long gone now. But it was from the olden day, like from the glory days of Broadway, called Downey's. Okay. On 8th Avenue, between, I want to say, 43rd and 44th, or 44th and 45th, right along there. Okay. On 8th Avenue, Downey's, and it was like Joe Allen's is, or one of those theater bars. Yeah. So, and in Downey's, they had booths, and in the booths, they had black and white photographs from decades past of, stars and iconic roles in their dressing rooms. Yeah. Black and white photographs of people taken in Broadway theaters in their dressing rooms. I wonder what happened to that photo collection. If anyone ever listening to this knows the answer, maybe they'll
please find out, YouTubers.
Amazing photographs. Yeah. So I had gone into the show, which was traumatic because you have like 10 rehearsals or something. It was a big part, a big 3-act play, like a long play. And so I had done it, and I had my opening night, and it was not an opening night for everybody else in the cast. They'd been in it for months. So
were you nervous, or at this point were you just so like, I got it?
I was terrified, but I had much to concentrate on, and I was young and could memorize fairly effortlessly, and so it wasn't really. It was it was terrifying, but it was thrilling too, So
Yeah.
I got through it, and then my boyfriend at the time and I went across the street to Downey's. Oh, and so one other interesting thing is that the number one dressing room at it was at the Golden, the Star dressing room, at that time had been whatever show had been in there before, or the time before that, somebody had really redecorated the Star room, so it was like
Wow.
very girly and like chintz, like really done up for a Broadway dressing room, which are usually kind of nicely. They usually look like exactly like an All About Eve. They look like kind of utilitarian.
Yeah, I worked for the Niederlander Theater Group as a survival job as a bartender, so I've seen them, and it's not exotic.
but they're kind of cool in their own way, because they're like, roses and then pipes. Like very like. So, but whoever had this dressing room, either the show before that, had redecorated that room from whoever the star was, and it had like, like a vanity curtain skirt on the makeup counter, and matched the drapes, and matched the slipcover on a little sofa, and it was cozy, but definitely like a dressing room. Couldn't believe it, and so it had been Mary Beth Hertz. And then, because she was, I guess, considered the most starry one to be in the first cast. And then when she left, Maya Dillon had gone into that. And then the stage manager was just like, we can't keep shuffling it. This is just going to be Babe's room from now on. So whoever replaces Maya is going into the Star. So not only did my first job in New York was on Broadway, but I was in the Star dressing room.
Wow.
Which wasn't. It happened to be kind of decorated, but it's a tiny little room. But it's number one. So I was in that room, and the one feature that was kind of unusual is it had a standing oval looking glass. So you could, you do your makeup, but then it had in the background like this big, full length on a stand that you could tilt. Beautiful oval, ornate kind of mirror. And it had all been painted in lavenders and greens, and it was like very tasteful, but it was very distinctive shape. So fast forward to that first night that I'd gone on, and I went out to Downey's with my then boyfriend, and we sat in a booth, and he went to get us a drink at the bar, and I looked at the photograph, and the photograph was of Bert Lahr backstage from Waiting for Godot, which coincidentally had opened at Coconut Grove Playhouse before Broadway, weirdly.
Wow.
So I looked at it, and I was like, oh, that show was in our theater, the Golden. And I looked at it. And then I looked back, and behind him in the photograph is that oval mirror.
No way.
Yes. I mean, way before I had ever been painted lavender. And I was like, I had these goosebumps. I was just all alone in my little booth. And it was just the most thrilling thing. And then just to tie up that story, my husband's play last season was in that theater, and Elaine May was in that room. But the oval mirror isn't there anymore. But she was in the number one dressing room at the Golden. Your
now husband.
My now husband.
Yeah. Amazing. One of the best writers in the world, and directors. But I'm so curious then, talk to me about that run, because, in New York, I mean, if you get lucky enough to get on Broadway, it's the dream, because all the agents, all the casting directors, and so many actors and directors and people that know people come. Did that open a lot of doors for you?
Well, I got a good agent out of it, but the play had been running already for months before I came into it. So like most of the theater people had seen it. Like it was more like on the tourist half of the run of the show.
I see what you see. It wasn't like a new play, so people were flocking to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think I invited some casting people to come see it, like to come back and see it again, to see me. It's a little bit hard to do that, to get people to. I wasn't in a position to buy them tickets.
Yeah.
And
you don't get comps as a lead?
Well, not when you're not opening night, not during the time. They're trying to just make their nuts so they can stay open. Like, not really, So, some people came, but it was also just a shiny credit to have on my resume.
Yeah, of course.
So even if people didn't see me in it, it was,
And then you said you got your agent.
I did. I got my then agent, not with that agent anymore.
Amazing. And then talk to me. How did that early agent? How was your relationship with that? Did that open you up to TV and film? I know you did Guiding Light and like talk to me about positioning
Oh,
wise.
guiding light. That's so funny because those I didn't have a like a regular. I guess they had a recurring role on that.
Yeah, yeah,
But I don't ever feel like I did that much work on soap operas. Like a lot of theater actors, at least in those days, would do them just to kind of. They would do commercials um, and soap operas to sort of shore up their rent money. Like it was,
yeah.
I mean, occasionally would test for a real role on those soap operas, the really lucrative jobs or those contract players. And I never got them, but I did. Yeah, I did. I was on Guiding Light. You're right. Victor Slezak was playing this like he was a guest actor on it too, and he was playing this bad boy who got involved with whoever the ingenue was in the story, and he was a bad one. He was like, gangster or something, and she was having this like walk on the wild side with Victor Slezak. And so
Amazing.
then it turns out that Victor Slezak's sister was blind
Wow.
and ran a school for the blind. And in the story, the ingenue character, I think her name was Beth, had temporary blindness. So in true soap opera fashion,
Of course.
going to my school, and we became, and it was this like tear-jerky thing where we both pretended to be blind. And it was pretty hokey.
What was the landscape like then? Because obviously now we live in a world where like TV is better than movies, and you can self-tape for a project that's shooting in Guatemala and have it to them in 30 minutes, So what was it like for you? Were you only going up for New York things, or
No.
were you auditioning for LA things as well?
Yeah. I would go, you have to go into the casting director's office, which you still do, but even to go on tape, you had to go in because you didn't tape at home. You didn't have, I used to live, so I lived up in Washington Heights, as I said. When I finally got an apartment, I lived in Washington Heights, and I would come in sometime. I did a lot of voiceovers in those days and commercials, and I would, have been in town to audition for some voiceovers. I'd just be in jeans and a t-shirt, and then I would get a call on my, answering service.
Wow.
Where you called in to get your messages.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you have an audition at 3:45 if you can make it. And I'd be like, well, there wouldn't be time to go home all the way on the subway and doll up and come back.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would go to the Plaza Hotel and go down in the basement. They had the fancy restrooms with the attendants and with all kinds of like
toiletries and makeup and
right. Yeah. So I'd go and wash my face and freshen up, and then I'm going to Bergdorf Goodman's to the makeup counter.
Oh, doing the samples?
And I do the makeup.
I love the hustle.
I might have a grungy t-shirt on and jeans, but this part would be sort of refreshed.
Yeah.
And audition. Because when you're that age too, you have lots of auditions.
Yeah.
And one perk of getting older is that people kind of know who you are. So they sort of know if they're interested in you or not. And not that you don't audition anymore, but you don't have the number of auditions for people who just don't know who you are. So you have to audition so that they have a frame of reference.
Yeah.
So I had a zillion auditions. A lot of them were misfires that didn't come to anything, but it was a method of getting to know, getting people to know who you were.
Yeah, of course. And did you tell the agent that you were just as interested in doing theater as much as you were, doing TVs and movies and projects?
I did. Well, I did mostly theater for the whole first part of my career, and I still think of myself as a theater actor.
You were nominated for a Tony.
I was.
Yeah. How was that experience?
That was thrilling.
Yeah.
It was wild. But I did test and even make some pilots along the way, but I was always very, I never saw myself as living in LA. And I guess my concept of who I was as an actor was as a theater actor.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be hard it never occurred to me to move to LA.
And you never did.
If I got a serious shot in LA, I would go and
Got it.
Go and move there. So I did a few pilots. None of them were picked up in that era. And then finally I did a show called The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd. Mm-hmm. It's a Jay Tarsis show that starred Ware Brown. and it shot at I think it's Silver Cup in Queens.
Yeah.
John Panko's wife. We were really young, and we played neighbors of Molly's, and it was great because every episode was written by a different New York playwright.
Yeah.
There was an episode by Eric Overmyer and Albert Inarato, and
wow.
And it had all, like, Victor Garber was on the show, and all
so
these
cool.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And then as the 90s progressed and TV started rising with like NYPD Blue and other things, did you start doing a lot of like co-star, guest star, reoccurring?
Yeah, Law and Order is the thing from my lifetime that supported all the people roughly in my era that underwrote our careers, because there were several of those shows. You could come back on them. Like I must have done, I don't know, half a dozen long.
Because there was like Law and Order, Criminal Intent, SVU, and I think there was another one at one point, but I can't remember what it was.
I think I was only in the first Law and Order a few times.
Okay.
And Criminal Intent, I think twice, and SVU once too, or maybe twice on that as well. So
in the Maloney days,
hmm?
In the Christopher Maloney days.
To begin with, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Wow.
And I did one early on. I did maybe a couple during those days, because I just saw a clip by accident of myself and Dylan Baker on a Law and Order, and I
love Dylan Baker.
Original cast. It was thrilling. Yeah.
That's so cool. And then as things started to evolve, you started doing movies as well. And did you find that fulfilling? Having because theater, the payoff comes. At the end, you see the audience and they get the clap. Like doing TVs and movies, those things are caught up in post, and you don't know. You can do your best job, but so much of it comes down to editing and scoring and casting.
Yeah, the other thing that you get really attached to as a theater actor that's hard to reconcile when you start working in film and TV is that in theater, it's a process. You have rehearsal. Yeah. So everything kind of grows. Like you can sleep on things and come back to it the next day, and you can hone it. And the beginning, middle, and ahead of time. Yeah. You know where the story's going, which, like on a TV series, just not the nature of TV. Like they don't know how many seasons they're going to go, so they don't know. They might have a rough idea of what
they're hoping for. Yeah.
Right, but they don't. They have to, by the nature of it, kind of be making it up as they go along. So, and you just don't, you might have a chance to rehearse the day of a little bit on a TV show, but it's different. Like in for a play, you have a few weeks to rehearse, and the relationship between you and your colleagues grows, and you get to know your parts gradually, and you get to kind of foster ideas or thoughts you have about it, and it gets to percolate and steep. And
totally.
All those good things. And so I got very attached to that. So it always felt like I was just shot out of a cannon on a film or TV set. Like, okay, go. Like, I didn't really have that process. And also, it's harder to get, unless you're in a really particularly good TV series or movie script, it's hard to get a smallish part that's really rich. You have to either kind of luck into something that is a proper supporting role that's really, there's a lot of jobs, particularly in TV shows, that are just like exposition, come and interview the lady in the shop about the criminal was seen on her camera, and they come and ask you some questions. It's very dry, and you have to kind of try to, it's almost even hard to memorize those lines, because there's no emotional through line, or very little one. You have to make one up, sort of.
Yeah.
So it's hard to play, like it's almost easier to be a lead in a movie, in my limited experience with that, than it is to play a small part.
Yeah, I feel the same.
You have room to stretch out, and you have a real developed character. And,
it's the one line audition where you're like, how do I do this? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Would you like some more water? Would you like more water? You just get so
like more water.
That's all the auditions I'm getting right now. But that's amazing. I'm curious to ask you then, because getting married and deciding to have children, let alone with another artist, that that brings a whole dynamic at play, because as acting, I don't want to say we're self-consumed, but we're so preoccupied with our next gig. You know what I mean? A great Denzel Washington quote is like, what was your favorite job? And it's my next one. And I think that's true for all actors. So when you guys got married and decided to have children, did you have to slow down your intake of auditions or offers, or and making sure that each one, or did you have like, you know, some parents I know do the you work, I'll take off, then you work and I'll take off.
Right. Well, yeah, we did some of that, but
Yeah.
mostly it was just, this is my second marriage. I didn't have children in my first marriage. I have one child now, but I felt like I was kind of came to parenthood a little late in the game. So I just really wanted to be there for it. Like I did have the help of a nanny and babysitters, but I didn't want to rely on that. I wanted to be there at bedtime. So it's hard to be in a play,
Yeah.
and also be there to read the bedtime story. You can't do both.
Yeah.
So I started to really, I mean, I wanted to back up to something you said earlier about, did you go up for television stuff when you were living in New York? And the thing is, one thing about being in plays, you know, you do 8 shows a week.
Yeah.
And then, so if you're just going from play to play, it's almost like hard to know when you're available to be in a movie.
Yeah.
You know,
when's the contract end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you almost have to just agree to be available for a while and hope that your film resume will build. And I really rarely did that. A couple of times I'd be like, I'm going to try to turn some stuff down and see what happens. But I would get restless, or I'd get offered something really exciting and want to do that. So that kind of happened again, because when I had Nellie, my daughter, I wanted to be around for it. So I kind of did like 1 play a year, usually, you know what I mean? But then it made me it afforded me the chance to be very selective. Which before I had to go from job to job to job, but now I had, you know, a partner to help me make the rent, and so there wasn't the same kind of, you know, I mean, I feel like most of my career, I just went from job to job just to pay the rent. And now I felt like I could be the stay-at-home mom for part of the year. And that afforded me to be able to go, well, I'm going to do 1 play this year. Let me hold out for something really juicy, whether it's a big part or just a great play, or just, you know, whether it's just a good part that's small, but I love it, or didn't matter about the size or the venue, but just it had to really speak to me for me to want to do it. And in a weird way, it made me get more choosy. So even though I did less stuff when she was growing up, I did really some choice things.
Yeah.
And that was just lucky because my husband was making a living.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really beautifully put. And before we dig into Succession, I'm curious to ask you, because, you know, you're so articulate and you're so grounded, and you've worked for so long. How did you not let any of the success and all the celebrity bullshit, you know, get in your head? Like, I'm so curious. How did you stay humble, I guess is the word I'm looking for?
Well, I mean, I don't really feel like I've had that kind of, you know, I haven't had any overnight success. You know, it's like one thing kind of prepared me for the next thing. When I got the part on Succession, there was no indication that it would be such an important role or such a fun role.
Talk to me about how it came your way.
So I had a chance to audition for Doug Abel, who I love, that casting director.
Yeah.
And at that point he was cast in Succession, and it was supposed to be a recurring role, but just for 4 episodes. Like, I had a little mini contract, like a little, they call it deal, just for 4 episodes. I was a guest star.
Got it. Yeah.
And I didn't really know much about the character. I knew it was a lawyer, and it was a big media family, like a super wealthy family.
Did you get the pilot script? Like, did you have an idea of the tone?
A little bit of one. They sent me a link to watch the pilot, because the pilot had been made quite a bit before that got picked up and went into production. But I couldn't get it to play. I saw a little bit of it.
That's so funny.
And I saw that Karen was in it, and I kind of got the mood of it, and it had the little jumpy camera, and it was edgy. But when I read it, even though I didn't know what I was referring to in it, I could tell it was funny. Like, I don't know how I could tell it was funny, but because I didn't know what the jokes were, but I could tell it just was very specific. The way that the character spoke was so specific. I don't know. It just resonated with me. And it was a kind of, now I know, it was like some scenes that were, some of them ended up as Frank scenes, the character that Peter was in the show.
Yeah.
Some ended up as Frank scenes and some were Gerri scenes, but Gerri was a guy. And
in the script?
Yeah, Gerri was a guy.
Wow.
So they would say, so the scenes I had were with like Kendall and Roman, and they would say something gross. You know, they were very vulgar on that show, and bratty and spoiled, and they would say something awful, and just because I was a woman playing but one of the major suits in the, you know, you could wince and just try not to, you know, try to be unflappable, but be like, ugh. And I just was having fun with that, but I didn't really have any, I had no idea if that was in the ballpark.
Yeah. You went with your instincts.
Yeah. I guess, you know, they'd say something gross and I'd be like, okay. And that became a thing with Gerri, you know, where, so they decided to cast a woman and cast me. And then, as I said, I thought I was in the first 4, and they said you might come back at the end, but I wasn't booked to do that. And then I ended up being somewhere in every episode.
Yeah.
And then season 2, I was a regular.
You're everyone's favorite character. I mean, you speaking of Bowie, you buoyed that family so well, and you're able, you know, I have friends that are of means, and I know what it's like to be just kind of like, whoa, and just kind of like having to encounter of that. So that's it's so interesting. I'm curious because like you play it brilliantly, and that's you know, I talk about this all the time on this podcast. That's the difference between good acting and great acting, is nobody else could have played Gerri in the world other than J. Smith Cameron. Like, it's just every scene you're in, you know, it's kind of like, you know, in A Clockwork Orange or The Dark Knight, when, you know, Alex, or, you know, Heath's character, Alex is the character's name, but, you know, the Joker, it's like, more, you want more, you know what I mean? I'm so curious, like, is there room for improv on that show, or a lot of your reactions, you know?
Yes, I think that, I mean, I think the reason that Gerri got expanded was they thought the same thing I thought was funny about her, that she would kind of like take it like a man. You know?
Yeah.
Take it. She could be one of the boys, but she was constantly grossed out by them and batting them away, and that with her facial reactions or her body language. And so I think they began to kind of write for that. I mean, they do that for everyone on the show. They really do, like,
right to the idiosyncrasies of the characters, and
and they sort of, it's a real collaboration. And then they do this thing where they used to do, they still do this sometimes, they call them a freebie, where you kind of do, they get it covered, they get the takes they need to, they feel they have it, and then they go, okay, this one's just a freebie, you kind of do whatever you want. And you could paraphrase it, or you could do something new, or just do it your own way a little bit. And sometimes they'll use those takes. Or the other thing they famously do is they'll leave the camera rolling, so you finish the dialogue.
Oh, and you can just free flow.
You just go on behaving. You might be talking, or you might just roll your eyes, or you might sigh, or, you know, in other words, life goes on. And so that, even if they don't use that footage, sometimes you'll see it kind of show up in another scene later on. Something that was innate to your take on this, on your character, might then be sort of written in later. Does that make sense?
100%. And
we did an improv for the Senate testimony episode in season 2. And we had to do some kind of off the cuff interviewing while we were being, while Tom Wamsgams and Gerri Kellman are being, you know, having their Senate testimony.
Yeah.
When we're being questioned at the hearings, we just did some extra footage where they had pages, but we didn't have time to learn them, or we kind of looked at them and they were like, you can just sort of wing your answer. I was like, okay. I don't know that Gerri would wing her Senate hearing answers.
Do you feel comfortable in the improv, or is it always kind of like?
Yeah, because we've done the written stuff.
Yeah.
Prepared. Well, by now it's sort of fun because you can't really do it wrong because there's
Yeah.
So I had earlier in the year I'd said to Jessie I thought that maybe Gerri had 2 grown-up daughters that were a little scared of her. That, they didn't. It wasn't like Logan and his sons, but they really wanted to please her, but they're a little scared of her, so they didn't like live in New York. But it was like just an idea I had. And he said, "Oh, that's funny. I didn't think of her as having children, but let's don't decide yet."
Yeah.
So we were doing the improv. I don't think they used it, but ever. It might have been in the background when the story cuts into the sort of war room. The people that were watching the testimony might have been on the background,
Got it.
So, so the Democrat senator asked me, "How would you feel it? Do you have children, Miss Kellman?" And I said, "Yeah, I have 2 daughters." And she was like, "Well, how would you feel if they were on one of these cruises?" And I was able to say, well, given the amount of oversight we now know to give this issue, I think it's basically the safest vacation that 2 young women could go on nowadays, actually. So it was like I kind of turned it into a win, I said,
yeah.
And so so we cut. As I said, I don't think they used that footage, but Jessie came running out laughing. It was like, "You got your daughters in." Sorry. But then in the finale, David Rashi's character, Carl, says, "Well, Gerri, what about when your daughters rode first class on the company dime? When they flew first class on the company dime?" It's just, you might not catch it, but it's in there.
Yeah.
So they wrote it in a reference to my daughters. So that's that kind of place.
Is that going to continue in season 3? I mean, did you guys start filming or no?
No, we were just about to when New York shut down.
Wow. And then I'm so curious about the Gerri Roman relationship. Was that something that Jessie, like, did you and Kieran become really close, and did Jessie just write to that, or was that something that you always just kind of?
No, I don't know. That's an interesting question because I mean the obvious answer is one of these improvs that when they kept the camera rolling was in season 1, at the end of season 1, when Tom and Chip get married in England.
Yeah.
There was a scene where Kendall and Roman had dialogue, and then at the end of it, Roman wandered up to the bar where Gerri was, kind of trying to eavesdrop, and we had a little exchange that was kind of improv. I don't remember what we said. We had a little
flirty,
kind of,
like
a little wisecracking.
Got it. Yeah.
And I don't remember what it was. Kieran remembers better than I do because I don't remember. But then he walked off, and I kind of looked back at his ass as he left the room. And then I turned back around, and he apparently looked back at me. And it was just such an unlikely thing and then you could hear them laughing in the distant rooms where the
Video Village or whatever. Yeah.
Right. You
Yeah.
could hear them laughing. So, but I was floored when they actually wrote that relationship. But then when you look back at the very first scene we shot, which is early on in episode 2, season 1, episode 2, the first scene I shot when you just meet Gerri, it's a little flirty.
Yeah.
I never
read into it the way that it would become.
Right. It's there's some kind of little weird, like, business flirt going on, little rapport there. And Kieran and I have known each other for a long time.
So you guys are close.
We did.
I imagine there must be a lot of trust, with that actor to be able to achieve that in the way that it needs to be achieved.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know if I trust him. But I'm used to him, and I really get a kick out of him.
Yeah.
He's really very free and inventive actor, so it's really kind of thrilling, but it's a little bit like hold on to your hat to act with him.
And what's it been like for J. Smith Cameron, of a show that just just got shot out of the stratosphere and into the next universe? Is that been an insane experience for you?
You mean the success of Succession?
Yeah, pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was I thought it was great straight away. I was like, this is really cool. This is a very cool
And
show.
all your classical roots, it's very Shakespearean, you know?
Kind of, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, I didn't know if other people would
React.
the way they did. And it was kind of interesting to watch, like, early reviews of it were like, it's very well done, but boy, the characters are so off-putting, and I'm not sure if it's something I would tune into regular, you know. And then some of those same critics would re-review it later in the season and go like, I changed my mind. It's now my favorite thing on television ever, you know.
To be blunt, I had the same relationship with it. And the first 3 episodes, I hated it. And I was like, I'm not watching it. And then someone's like, dude, just go back. And I didn't watch it as it aired. And then I went back and I fought my way through. And then the payoff was like, I was so wrong. You know?
Yeah.
I'll admit it.
Yeah, it's like, I think that's true with all big, complicated TV shows, is they do take a while to stamp out their characters and their tone.
Yeah.
Like, if you look back, those early episodes are in the same theme, and you'll probably enjoy them now more if you went back.
Yeah, I have to. I actually was rewatching some for this, like, you know, the Safe Room episode. Like, oh God, so funny. But now I got to go back to the first season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Has that been fun, being received so well by not only, you know, Hollywood, but just by fans? You know, is that, I imagine, you know, when you walk in the streets in New York, that must be pretty funny when people stop you and or say weird things.
Yeah, no, it's, of course, it's thrilling.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's great too, because it's not, it's wonderful to be on a show that is smart and sort of daring. Like, I feel like it doesn't ever pander or worry about, didn't worry about us being likable. They didn't worry about it being clear. Like, sometimes the plot point's such a plotty show, like plot is a big part of that show, but sometimes you have to really be paying attention or you'll miss it. Nothing is easy and pre-digested, I think.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I convinced audiences love it, is they have to use their brains and they have to pay attention to little details. And I think people actually really enjoy that. I mean, there's one theory that you watch TV to escape from having to think hard about things. And there's certainly a place for that kind of television too.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, nowadays people really do like, it's more of an immersion. Like, it's kind of, you really go somewhere when you have to really pay attention and you're like, wait a minute, I missed that. And you have to rewind it and then really pay attention. That's thrilling.
Yeah,
I mean,
I totally agree.
I don't, you know, taste about televisions when they're really layers to things. That's engaging.
And do you guys think, you know, season 3 will be able to happen before, filming wise, before the end of 2020, or is it just all up in the air?
Well, that's certainly the hope. I mean, I think they're really, really, really being proactive about trying to brainstorm a safe way to do it.
Yeah.
And if there's any company out there who could pull that off, I think it's this film crew and this producer and HBO, because they're very thoughtful and because we shoot all over the world, they're in sort of a think tank with production companies all over the globe.
Yeah, maybe doing a Scotland season or something, you know.
I don't know I'm not sure what they're planning, but I think they're not only thinking of the protocol for how to do it safely, but also like how to adapt a story to go sort of where COVID isn't, you know. Like right now, the idea of shooting in New York City is a possibility, whereas in April, that was the hot spot of it when we're meant to start early April. And that's, you know, we were the epicenter of it. Now we're kind of, not good, doing very well in New York. So it's not impossible to imagine being able to start in the fall, maybe. Yeah. In New York. And then in terms of where, I don't know where the story, I have no hints about where the story goes, but on the other seasons we've traveled around. So I think that they are able to transpose and maybe try to, when travel is open to Americans, because so many, not the whole company, but so much of the company is American. So when it's safe to travel, I think they'll figure out a way. If anyone can do it, it will be this outfit, I think.
That's amazing. And obviously I know because of the pandemic as well, unfortunately for, people like me who both audition and work in theater to survive, would you go back to the stage anytime soon when that reality becomes open again?
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love plays. Yeah.
that's amazing. And to wrap up, I know this is a very heavy question, but for all the young J Smiths, people that are in Florida or South Carolina or Kentucky and are trying to navigate this thing, and we're kind of dealing with the pandemic, and what any advice you would have for actors out there?
Um, I think if you keep your focus on the play part of it, the fun part, the creative part of it, and not try to calculate. I don't know if I'm anyone to go on because I think a lot of people, like, I'm very proud of my career. I'm proud of all those parts I play on stage, and that's not
Yeah,
what everyone's going for. So
people want fucking fame now. They want glory. They don't care about.
yeah, I want to be rich and famous
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
That wasn't really my criteria, but
Sorry.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
no, but I mean, I think if you just keep thinking about what draws you to it, and if you even think of your auditions as an acting opportunity, like I came to think of an audition as my acting hit for the day. Like if I
yeah,
wasn't working and I had an audition, I just tried to enjoy it. Like
yeah,
try to make it my own and stretch out in it if I at all could.
yeah,
And so and also just day-to-day life, like if you live in New York City, just riding the subway is an acting class. Like you just look
for
around
sure.
and you start, you have a long ride on the subway and you're watching, the man across from you is exhausted and nodding off, and the person next to them is cramming for an exam with their notebook and pencil out. And
Yeah,
the person next to that is wrangling their toddler, and
yeah.
the person besides them is, cross and talking to himself and crazy. And it's just one character
Character
study,
study, totally.
and you can kind of sometimes it's almost a meditation just to kind of study people that are in public, but they're kind of in private, because there's
Yeah,
a sort of a world and being in New York where it's like a construct, a social construct where we're kind of in private. Like, you go out to walk your dog and you're not really, there's like a compact we made that we're all
yeah,
like in our own worlds.
yeah.
You can stop and be friendly and talk, but you don't have to. Kind of, do you know what I'm saying? Like you
A
could go
hundred
out
percent.
and walk your dog. It's not impossible. Like it's anything goes in New York, and it's kind of like there's room for individuality and privacy because it's so full of people. So you can have anonymity in a way, even though it's
Yeah,
kind of not what you'd think if you didn't live there. But so it's so interesting to study people in public and study people in New York and try to. And so sometimes you can muse on people, and then use it later, like a
yeah,
couple months go by and you have a audition and you're like, maybe it was like how exhausted that nurse was on her way back on the subway during the
yeah,
pandemic. That woman in her scrubs was so tired and she looked so scared, and you can kind of channel her because you just observed her so closely. And so I think if you just look at all of life as being one big acting lesson, it kind of can tide you over, and it's
yeah.
very healing.
I share this just because for the creatives, and it's going off directly what you said. A very close and dear filmmaker and writer friend of mine, Maximilian Williamson, who's been really kind of forcing me to write more. As actors need to do now. It's you can't just be one thing anymore. Has told me as a writing exercise to when I'm on the subway, go write a short about one of those people. Like think
Yeah,
about where they came from, what their day is, just as a writing exercise.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah,
We didn't do that in my day, but that's true. You do
yeah,
just make your own content now. I mean, in your head at least,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing episode, and I love talking with you. And let's do
Likewise.
this. Let's do this again when season 3 starts airing, and let's grab coffee in the city. And I'd love to talk to your daughter about NYU and introduce you to some of
Okay,
my friends you're still teaching there.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
love it.
J. Smith Cameron, I'm wishing you and your family nothing but health and love, and I have such admiration for you and your work, and I can't wait to see what else everything is, and stay in touch.
Thank you. You too.
All right. So much love.